really quick, I think everybody knows who I am, but I'll reintroduce myself in case anyone watching the recording later doesn't know. I am Doug Johnson. I'm the Director of Youth and Family Ministries here at St. Andrews. And we're going to talk a little bit about Discipleship Ministries and what all that means. So, let's see if we can get this to work. There we go. So, our committee members are Dana Natby, who's our chair, Mary Davis, Beth Donahoe, Anthorpe, Lois Nelson, Sherry Grindelin, Aaron Davis, Ann Ross Clark, and myself. So if you have any questions about anything that's going on, you can talk to any of these lovely people. Oh, that's the wrong way. Alright, I was trying to find a fun Bible quote or a quote from Luther on discipleship, and I really like this one. And it kind of gets to the core of what do we do as discipleship. So Luther says, in holy and divine matters, one must first hear rather than see, first believe rather than understand, first be grasped rather than grasp, first be captured rather than capture, first learn rather than teach, first be a disciple rather than a teacher, and a master of his own. We have an ear so that we may submit to others, and eyes that we may take care of others. Therefore, whoever in the church wants to become an eye, and a leader, and a master of others, let him become an ear and a disciple first. This first. To kind of get down to the very core, discipleship really is all about the act of being a disciple. Just like Luther was elaborating here, to be able to best do that, we first need to be able to learn and grow and help better understand what it means to follow Christ, than just going out and start trying to be the leader of everything. In discipleship, we try to help equip folks in learning and growing and sharing and helping and following the example of Christ. Because that is literally what it means to be a disciple, is to be a follower. All right. Too many buttons. So, what does Discipleship Ministries include? A lot. So we have Sunday Church School and Cornerstone Ministry, which is our confirmation, adult education, youth trips, our work within the cluster, activities and events, our growing young team, and so many more things that aren't listed on this slide. This is maybe half of all the things that we do here in our church and in our community. So we're going to cover as much of this as we can today, and feel free to ask questions along the way as you hear or see things. And we're going to try to get through as much of it as we can, but we may not get to all of it. So, like I said, don't be afraid to interrupt, raise a hand, shout out, smoke signals from the back if I can't hear you. So, yeah. All right. Here we go. We're going to start with our Sunday Church School. This year, our teachers are Ann Ross Clark, who's been a long-time Sunday Church School teacher, and Alex Lynn, who is one of our high school youth. The two of them have been working together downstairs with our students. Currently, we have our 5 students, and just I think last week we had all 5 students together, which was awesome. And they have a fun little new classroom setup. They moved classrooms this year, which is actually I think right below us. So feel free to go and check out the classroom. And they do great work. They're down there right now. So yeah, it's really cool. The Sunday Church School and Confirmation, our Cornerstone Ministry, is following the narrative lectionary for their lessons. So there's a shared story every Sunday between what learning is happening in those rooms and what's being shared in worship. Next is our Cornerstone Ministry. So every Sunday the youth meet in the conference room as one part of what Cornerstone Ministry is. 3 years ago we started a conversation with with leaders and teachers and families about how to best move forward with confirmation. And after a year of conversation with those folks, we came up with Cornerstone Ministry with the goal to move beyond just the classroom learning model of confirmation of we want you to just learn all the things in the Bible and then expect you to know what to do with that knowledge, and move towards a model of walking alongside them to give them a good foundation to build up the cornerstones of faith. So we have our 4 cornerstones, which should look familiar to you because they are the 4 values that we have for the church of worship, outreach, discipleship, and relationship. Each of these areas have their own requirements. So worship, we want the kids to be worshiping in community because it's an important part of our faith, to participate in the leadership of worship, because that's also important. Outreach, so going out and serving in the community, so they have so many hours they need to complete every year. Discipleship, the learning component, which is part of what we do on Sunday morning, but there's other components of that. And then relationship, how we come together in faith, because faith is something that we do communally. It's not something we just do on our own. So these youth are not only learning all these pieces, but they have adults that are walking alongside them to help them grow through all these pieces. This is really quick. There's a whole handbook for it if you want to read it. But yeah, so this is our second full year of the new Cornerstone Ministry, with the idea that instead of just doing classrooms, we want them to have a good foundation of faith to move forward into this next phase of faith life for those who affirm their faith, like we saw last Sunday. We also are doing a lot of collaborative ministry. This is something that's been relatively new over the last year and a half, 2 years. And we've been working really hard, not only in our cluster, but also in our synod. One of the early things that I did in collaborative ministry was actually doing some shared youth events with St. Matthew's Lutheran Church in Renton. We've gone to each other's churches to have different activities and events, and last fall we shared a retreat together down at Seebeck Conference Center, and this year we're actually doing some more bigger things as well. But there's also moved with the leadership of the cluster into doing collaborative ministries along through our cluster. One of the things that we've done recently that's been really great has been our family game nights within our cluster. In September, we were at Mount Si Lutheran Church, and we saw over 30 people in attendance for that event. In October, for the game night, which we hosted here in this room, we had almost 50 people in the room from the from St. Andrew's, Mount Si, and St. Michelle's Lutheran churches. So, and it had all different ages from, pre-elementary all the way through those that are retired, coming together, sharing games, having fun, and growing together. So it's really exciting. By the way, if you wanted to go to the one in November at St. Michelle's, there's a sign-up QR code in the narthex. Don't be afraid to sign up. It's open to everyone. But we're also looking to do more collaborative ministries down the road. We're also doing work in our synod. This coming weekend, we are going to be one of 11 different churches heading to the Lutherwood camp up near Bellingham for a synod fall youth retreat. There's going to be 75 people, 60 youth, and it's just going to be a really great experience. I'm actually co-leading that with Bobby Sear, who is the youth director at St. Matthew's. We've been coordinating that. So that's one way that we're working within our synod, but also I'm a part of the Children, Youth, and Family Ministries cohort, which is an offshoot of the LIVE project through the synod, which allows us to work and grow in relationship with other children, youth, and family leaders, both staff and volunteers, in learning and supporting and growing together. We're also here at the church. In the spring, we started a new team called our Growing Young team. And this was, we collected a small group of leaders who volunteered to take on the task of how to grow our church young. One of the things that I've heard time and time again is we love seeing our families here, but why aren't there more of them? So this is one way that we are addressing that question of how are we going to continue to find new ways to welcome families into our congregation. And you might ask the question, well, what does it mean to grow young? Growing young means looking at sustainable ways to build healthy ministries for our children, youth, and family for years to come. And one of the ways that we do that is by looking through these 6 core commitments, which come out of this Growing Young book, which is a book of a lot of research and stories through the Fuller Youth Institute in Southern California. And I'd be happy to come back to this, but each of these the idea is to use these core commitments to help us not only grow young, but to be healthier as a whole. Because when we focus on helping our young families feeling welcome and be incorporated throughout the whole of the life of the church, whether it's through leadership or the messaging or how we are neighbors and serve our neighbors, we see that health goes out through the rest of the congregation. This book surveyed something like 200 plus congregations to see how healthy ministries grow. And part of that is seeing that when we welcome all ages into the ministries, it is healthy for everyone. Like I said, going really quickly through things, so I'm happy to elaborate on any of these points if you have any questions. In June of 2022, we awarded a grace grant, which I think was shared during our last annual meeting in June. And the grace grant was to revitalize our old nursery space into a faith and family center. And through many hours of hard work from volunteers and Kurt, and especially Kurt, we're coming close to the end of this project. So if you have time, go and check it out. There's lots of great changes that have been made to that space, and we're looking for new ways to use that space in partnership, not only with the ministries here, but with our mission partners throughout the area, to be able to have a space that is family focused. In the last year and a half, we've done last year, we've done a couple of new community events with the goal of outreach into our community. So these are primarily focused on those outside of our congregation. The first of those was the trunk retreat. Last year, we saw close to 150 kids come through our parking lot, which meant probably close to 450 people walking through our property, getting to know members of our community in both directions. Us as members of the congregation, knowing folks from the community, and the people from the community getting to know us. It was a blast. The kids had a lot of fun. One of the things that the people that came to visit us really enjoyed was we had opportunities for them to vote on their favorite trunks. And man, there were some folks that really got into it. We did the same thing this year. We had a ticketing system for people to vote. They used color tickets to vote for different styles of trunks. And some of the kids took it really seriously, going back and forth, running through the parking lot multiple times, trying to figure out which one had the best candy, or who had the best costumes, or which one was the silliest. And so it was really a great event. And we did it again just last week, and we had very similar results to the previous year. And overall, it's just a wonderful time. The other event that we did in the spring was the Easter Festival, which even saw more families and more children coming through our space, which even exceeded my expectations of the people wanting to come to our building for an Easter Festival and Easter egg hunt. We probably saw over 500 people come through the building that day. Now, I will admit, it was chaotic because we weren't planning for that many people, but we are working on new ways to be able to accommodate a large volume of people, which is something that we should be proud of, that people want to come into our space and see us and get to know us. So there's already plans coming up for the Easter Festival. We have a number of youth activities every year that happen, and as well as youth trips. these range from the beloved Sock Samurai to mini golf and a whole variety of other things. And we do a number of trips every year. We have the fall retreat, the May Youth Weekend, summer trips for the youth, including Western states, or doing trips that are more local without actually traveling, which would include the tiny house build that we've done twice now in the last 3 years. And every year we have middle schoolers and high schoolers participating in these events with great enthusiasm, and it's a great time. And if you ever want to have fun with the youth, these are great ways to plug in, especially things like mini golf and Sock Samurai, because you get them doing an activity and they open up, and it's such a great time. I really recommend that you at least try one event throughout the year. Adult education. I will admit I am not heavily involved with adult education, so Kit, do you want to say anything about what adult ed does? I know they do more than just adult forum and the Bible study, but feel free to share more of what the adult ed does.
Well, I really can't add a whole lot more, but I will ask the question to tie in with it. If you talk about the Cornerstone program, that sounded to me like, you were talking, these are the kids that have already been confirmed, so it's like kind of like they're affirming their faith afterwards, but am I mistaken in that, or is it part of the confirmation?
So Cornerstone Ministries is our new name for what was the ABC ministry before, for confirmation. Okay. So during those 2 years, we're building up those 4 cornerstones to give them a firm foundation for faith. That's the goal. So often with confirmation, you see kids go through, they go to the classes on Sunday morning, they do their affirmation of faith service, and then they disconnect from faith. The goal is, hopefully, by connecting into all the areas of faith, it becomes more meaningful. It's not going to completely bring everybody in, obviously, but the goal is by connecting them into those areas of faith, they're going to be more involved.
The reason I asked the question is that it almost seems like all of us in this room that have no hair, gray hair, whatever, probably could go through this class again. I don't know if that'd be something that would be an intergenerational class potentially. I don't know if that would inhibit the kids necessarily from wanting to, I know like I taught sometimes if you had a couple adults in there and stuff, they might get a little inhibited about responding to questions and so forth. But if that wasn't the case, I mean, it would be a learning experience for everybody.
Yeah, I think, most of us, it's been a long time since we went through confirmation, and there's great opportunities for learning at any age. And I'll tell you what, even with 2 seminary degrees, there's stuff I learn every year when I go through and teaching class, because there's so much to know. And so I think there's certainly opportunity for intergenerational learning, and realizing that our faith life is more than just showing up to worship on Sunday or going to a Bible study. That it's a holistic part of who we are.
How many students are involved in the Cornerstone?
So this year we have, I think we have 10 students, I think, total, between our different age groups. So, yeah.
Well, one more thing, Doug, I think for adult ed, it doesn't always happen on Sundays either. I mean, the web groups for the women and for Tuesday morning men, I mean, those are ongoing, continuing, education programs that are put on by small groups within the church.
Yeah, I know that there's certainly a large number of ministries that happen here with, like you said, Webs, Tuesday morning men. There's the midweek Bible study with Pastor Laura. There's, and you can probably put a lot of other pieces under adult education, but certainly it is not a ministry that is lacking for opportunities. So, like I said, this was a really quick overview of a lot of the things that happen here. It's not comprehensive. There's so much that happens each and every week here at St. Andrews that falls under the umbrella of Discipleship Ministries. So I want to make sure that there is time for questions or other feedback. Mary and Aaron are both here representing the committee as well, so feel free to chime in as well if there's other things you want to share. But yeah, that was just a really quick 30,000 foot look at what Discipleship Ministries does. And if you have any questions or want to know about any of those other things that I talked about, I'd be happy to elaborate, but I wanted to kind of get through all those quickly. Other questions? Sure.
Well, I guess you listed about 7 or 8 children. What ages were they? Because I know we have other children.
Yeah, so for our Sunday church school, they're mostly earlier elementary or pre-K.
Yeah, so it's so Daniel's the youngest at 3, and then the oldest kids are 2nd graders.
Yeah.
Okay, then, so how many do we have between 3rd grade and confirmation?
Not a lot. We have a few families that come periodically, but that's right now a big gap in our families, which is part of what the Growing Young team is looking at trying to address before we can really go out and get more families, which sounds a terrible way to say. We want to make sure that this is a place where families want to be. And so we're looking at finding new ways to incorporate families into the life and ministry of the church.
So there's a little bit of catch-22 with young families, in that if you don't have young families, it's really hard to get the young families to show up for stuff. Because especially the kids, the parents, we'll mix in with the older generational groups, as we see fit. But the kids especially, they really want a core group where they can be with. So they don't find it fun to just have like 2 of them there. Mm-hmm. It's not fun. It's more fun when they're in, a medium to large size group. So especially for that kind of, right now it's 3rd grade out, right? Next year it'll be 4th grade. So it's a little bit of this catch-22 with that age range where you need kids to get kids. And so, there's I think a number of ways that we can go about this, and I'm not on the committee that's working on this specifically, but either you kind of got to get a critical mass of kids, or you can kind of grow it up and wait the time, right? And I think, I'm not sure on exactly what the numbers are, but if we look at our younger families, so right, the age cutoff is 3 years old. There are a number of kids who are kind of on that lower end, below 3, that will start to kind of migrate in. Like Daniel's the first of those, and then we have a couple of other younger kids that are like 1 or 2 years old. So that's the other thing that we'll start to see, I think, changing a little bit is we've got some kids that are coming up and some families with really young kids, and they're not in that age 3 to 2nd grade range yet, but they'll kind of flow through as well. So we'll just have to sort of see it adjust as those kids.
That does also mirror the same enrollment patterns that we're seeing in schools right now of like 3rd through 5th grade are kind of a little on the lower side as well as 2nd grade because of all sorts of environmental factors too. So I mean it's kind of, it's a little of A and a little of B, right? If they're not here, it's hard to say, oh yeah, I'm going to bring my 4th graders here. Oh wait, there's no other 4th graders, but also how many 4th graders are there in the greater Bellevue area right now that are looking for a church?
The 2 major factors, like Aaron is saying, is peer groups are important for any age, but especially for kids and for youth. If there isn't a number where they feel like they are going to be safe in joining the group, it's a lot scarier for anyone, but especially kids, to want to be the only one or the only 2 kids present, whether it's in Sunday school or in worship or wherever, versus being in a group of kids where there's that safety in numbers, and it's easier to form relationships. It's easier actually for kids to form friendships in groups than it is individually. And the other part is, to Mary's point, there's always natural peaks and valleys in attendance for these age groups. And if you look back over the last 50 years of this church, you will see that there were some grades that had high volumes of kids and some that had lower volumes of kids, which is pretty normal. I think what's different in this part is that we have none in a few age groups essentially. But that doesn't mean that we can't change that. But it takes work to make it to a point where families will want to be here, because going back to that previous point of meeting the numbers. So, like Mary said, a little bit of column A, a little bit of column B. Other questions? Sherry, is there anything that you would like to share? No? Okay.
Okay, yes, it's not too late to register for the women's retreat if you've been thinking about it. We can squeeze you in.
Thank you, Doug, for doing this
Yeah.
presentation.
Yep. Thank you all for being here.